All right, now back to Nigeria, where the Central Bank of Nigeria commences its two-day Monetary Policy Committee, that's the MPC meeting, on Monday. Now, some financial experts have projected that the apex bank would retain the current policy rates. So let's listen in as the CBN holds the first MPC meeting of 2023.
Giving room for increased concerns of a likely global recession in 2023. This is driven by several global shocks impacting negatively on growth and price development. Major headwinds to global growth include ongoing geopolitical tensions in some regions, intensified disruptions to the energy market, persisting supply bottlenecks, resurgence of the COVID-19 pandemic in major industrial cities in China, and tightening external financial conditions. In addition to these, the slow growth in global trade, continued volatility in the oil market, and growing private and public debt portfolios are clear signals of increasing uncertainty, imposing a drag on growth. Private and public debt portfolios are clear signals of increasing uncertainty, imposing a drag on growth. Output growth recovery was subdued in the third quarter of 2022, expected to recover greatly in the fourth quarter on the back of continued support of both monetary and fiscal policy through various interventions in growth-enhancing sectors. At this meeting, the committee reviewed these and other developments in the global and domestic economic and financial environments in 2022, as well as the outlook and risks for 2023. 12 members of the committee attended this meeting yesterday and today. The global development. The committee noted with concern the growing evidence of increased militarization of the war in Ukraine and the consequence of a prolonged war on the recovery of the global economy. It also noted the renewed concern of the possibility of yet another pandemic reverberating the global economy in 2023 as infection rates rise in China following its lifting of COVID-19 restrictions. Two factors alongside the tightening of global financial conditions associated with the ongoing normalization of monetary policy in the advanced economies remain major headwinds to global economic growth. The combined impact of these shocks on the global economy could result in further disruptions to commodity and energy markets, as well as the efficient functioning of global supply chains. In the advanced economies, fiscal policy retreated to give way to monetary adjustments, while in the emerging markets and developing economies, fiscal capacity is being greatly undermined by the array of shock spillovers from the global economy. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in its October 2022 World Economic Outlook, retained its global output growth projection for 2022 at 3.2%, but was further downgraded in 2023 forecast to 2.7% compared with 2.9% in its July 2022 forecast. The World Bank in its latest forecast indicated a much lower growth expectation of 1.7% for 2023. On price development, the MPC observed that inflation in most advanced economies, although trending downwards, remain significantly above their long-run objectives and expected to remain elevated throughout 2023. This is driven by the continued high price of food and energy, a fallout of the war in Ukraine, lagged impact of the massive liquidity support rolled out to douse the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, disruptions to the global supply chain as China faces a renewed surge of the pandemic. Fears that Russia may renege its commitment to the Black Sea grain deal is also building expectations of possible rise in medium-term price levels. In the emerging markets and developing economies, inflation is expected to moderate marginally in 2023, but remain broadly elevated due to a combination of factors such as the persisting high price of grains and other commodities, continued exchange rate pressures, and other legacy structural factors. The global financial markets, the continued normalization of monetary policy has led to the tightening of external financial conditions and increased volatility in equities market. With the increased fears of a likely global recession in 2023, investors have commenced a move towards safe haven assets such as gold and silver to safeguard their portfolios. In the advanced economies, corporate debt levels remain considerably high as pressure builds to avoid default scenarios with the continued hike of monetary rates. In the emerging markets and developing economies, the persistence of rising public debt profiles and capital flow reversals are putting severe pressure on exchange rates, posing a challenge to external sustainability. Our domestic development. Available data from the National Bureau of Statistics reveal that real gross domestic product grew by 2.25% year-on-year during the third quarter of 2022, compared with 3.54% in the second quarter and 4.03% in the corresponding period of 2021. The economy has continued on a path of positive growth for 8 consecutive quarters. This is driven largely by the support by the bank and the fiscal authority to growth-enhancing sectors. Star projections showed that output growth recovery is expected to continue reasonably in 2023, given the expected sustained positive performance during the fourth quarter of 2022 and steady rebound in economic activities. MPC welcomed the moderation in inflation following 10 consecutive months of uptick as headline inflation year-on-year declined marginally to 21.34% in December 2022 from 21.47% in November 2022. Month-on-month headline inflation, however, increased to 1.71% in December 2022 from 1.39% in the preceding month due to a rise in consumer spending during the festive period. The committee observed the continued growth in money supply with broad money M3 growth exceeding the 2022 provisional benchmark of 15.21% at 16.52% year to date in December 2022 compared to 18.92% in November of 2022. This was largely driven by increased claims on other sectors like other financial corporations, state and local governments, public non-financial corporations, and the private sector. Money market rates oscillated below and within the asymmetric corridor of the standing facilities corridor, reflecting changing liquidity conditions in the banking system. Accordingly, the monthly weighted average open buyback OBB rate decreased to 11.61% in December 2022 from 12.56% in November, while the monthly average interbank rate increased to 12.08% in December 2022 from 11.89% in November. The MPC noted the continued resilience of the banking system, evidenced by the progressive improvement in non-performing loans NPLs ratio from 4.9% in November 2022 to 4.2% in December of 2022. Committee also noted that the liquidity ratio was well above its prudential limit at 44.1%, while the capital adequacy ratio remained at 13.8% in December 2022 compared with the preceding month, staying within its prudential range of 10 to 15%. The equities market was bullish in the review period as the all-share index and market capitalization increased to 51,251 and 27.92 trillion naira on December 30th of 2022 from 43,839.08 and 23.88 trillion naira respectively on October 31, 2022. This reflected better than expected corporate earnings and improved investor confidence in the market. Committee noted the marginal decline in the external reserves as gross external reserves decreased by 0.95% at the end of December 2022 to $36.55 billion from $36.9 billion at the end of November 2022. This reflects the exchange rate pressure accentuated by a combination of heightened demand and slow accretion to reserves. The committee reviewed the performance of the bank's various interventions aimed at stimulating production and productivity across the real sector. Between September and October 2022, under the Anchor Borrowers program, the bank disbursed 41 billion naira to several agricultural projects, bringing cumulative disbursement under that program to 1.067 trillion naira, to over 4.6 million share smallholder farmers cultivating or rearing 21 commodities across the country. The bank also released 300 million naira to finance large-scale agricultural projects under the Commercial Agricultural Credit Scheme (CAX), bringing total disbursements under the scheme to 745 billion naira for 680 projects in agro-production and agro-processing. In addition, the bank released a sum of 48.3 billion naira under its 1 trillion naira real sector facility to 7 new real sector projects in agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Cumulative disbursements under the real sector facility currently stands at 2.15 trillion naira, disbursed to 437 projects across the country, comprising 240 manufacturing, 91 in agriculture, 93 in services, and 13 mining sector projects. To 9 projects in the healthcare, manufacturing, and services sectors. This brings the cumulative disbursements under the facility to 114.17 billion naira to 71 projects across manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, and services. The bank released 4 billion naira under the intervention facility for the National Gas Expansion Program to promote the adoption of compressed natural gas as the preferred fuel for transportation and liquefied petroleum gas as the preferred cooking fuel. In the SME sector, the bank supported entrepreneurship development with the disbursement of the sum of 1.3 billion naira and 10 million naira under the Agribusiness Small and Medium Enterprise Scheme and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development Fund, respectively, to support entrepreneurship development in the country, bringing total disbursements under the interventions to 150 billion naira and 96 billion naira, respectively, under the Export Facilitation Initiative. The bank export-oriented projects with a sum of 5.34 billion naira, bringing the cumulative disbursements under the intervention to 44.58 billion naira. The outlook. The broad outlook for the recovery of both the global and domestic economies remain uncertain, with the path to full recovery clouded by significant downside risks. The lingering war, heightened inflationary pressures across several economies, and sharp slowdown of economic activities in China with the resurgence of COVID-19 pandemic across its major cities. Others include the tightening of external financial conditions as monetary policy normalization continues, increasing risk of a global debt crisis as both corporate and public debt levels burgeon, and rising risk of a global recession in 2023. Available data and forecasts for key macroeconomic indicators for Nigeria suggest that the economy will continue to grow through 2023, but at a subdued pace. The continued high level of insecurity, perennial scarcity of petroleum motor spirit PMS, and high cost of other energy sources, increased spending towards the 2023 general election, rising cost of debt servicing, and deteriorating fiscal balances remain the key sources of shocks to the Nigerian economy. Accordingly, the economy is forecast to grow in 2023 by 2.88% by the CBN estimate, 4.2% federal government estimate, and 3% by the IMF estimate. The committee's consideration. At this meeting, although the MPC was delighted that inflation year-on-year had started to moderate, it was not convinced that a marginal 13 basis points dip in inflation was enough to begin to celebrate. The committee was therefore of the opinion that a hold or losing option was desirable. This is because loosening under a double-digit inflationary condition will be tantamount to an immediate reversal of the expected further downward trend in inflation. The committee also felt that loosening will negate the objective of dampening the pent-up aggregate demand that fueled the rise in inflation post-COVID-19 pandemic. As for hold, the committee was reluctant in considering this option because a hold option would signal MPC's quick adjustment of its policy stance due to a one-time marginal decline in inflation, suggesting a weak thrust in its previous policy stance at taming inflation. The MPC was therefore unanimous in its position to continue to tighten. However, the dilemma at this meeting was whether to continue tightening aggressively or moderately. To the committee, a moderate tightening may slow the rate of deceleration in inflation without necessarily hurting output. For those members who felt that an aggressive stance was needed, they were of the view that Nigeria's inflation at a rate above 20% was spread to growth and among the highest in the world. To this group of members, aggressively raising the policy rate was paramount to reining in inflation because an aggressive tightening stance will further narrow the negative real interest rate margin. MPC also feels tightening stance would signal confidence in the effectiveness of its monetary policy direction to rein in inflation, improve financial system stability, and moderate exchange rate. The committee's decision. Members welcomed the recent deceleration in year-on-year headline inflation, noting that the persistence in policy rate hikes over the last few meetings of the committee has started to yield the expected decline in inflation. The committee thus deliberated on either to hike rates further or hold for the impact of the last 4 rate hikes to continue to feed through. At this MPC, therefore, the options considered were primarily to hold the policy rate or tighten further to consider against previous rate hikes. Loosening in the view of members would gravely undermine the gains of the last 4 rate hikes. MPC noted the continued upward risks to price development characterized by the forthcoming 2023 general elections, perennial scarcity of PMS, continued rise in other energy prices, exchange rate pressures, as well as rising insecurity. Members, however, noted that the current Naira redesign and cash limits policies are huge moderating factors to price development as currency outside banks is expected to continue to moderate beyond the implementation stage of these policies. MPC was of the view that although inflation rate moderated marginally in December, the economy remained confronted with the risk of high inflation with adverse consequences on the general standard of living. Committee therefore decided to sustain the current stance of policy at this point in time to further rein in inflation aggressively. One member voted to increase the MPR by 50 basis points, 4 members by 50 basis points, and 7 members by 100 basis points. In summary, MPC voted to 1. Raise MPR to 17.5%, 2. Retain the asymmetric corridor at plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the corridor, and 3. Retain the CRR at 2.5%, and 4. Retain the liquidity ratio at 30%. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Governor. And that was communique number 146 of the 289th meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And of course, incidentally, the first for the year 2023. We shall be entertaining some questions from the press. And as usual, tell us your name, the media house you represent, and your question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Governor. My name is Ndoka Chejin of the Nation newspaper. Mr. Governor, sir, after many months of upward trajectory, inflation is to 21.34% as of December 2022. To you, is this a positive enough sign?
Hold on. There is interference.
His phone is near the mic. Him that is speaking. But he's here.
Go ahead.
So is this a positive?
Try.
Is
Just
this
try.
a positive development, or should we look forward to inflation coming down in the future? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Governor. My name is Barry from Nigeria. According to the bank's timetable, the old 200, 500, and 1,000 notes will cease to be legal tender from next week Tuesday. And last week, your staff were all out on compliance drive. And one of the issues that came up was a request for an extension owing to reasons they highlighted, including difficulty in accessing the new ones. What do you say to this request?
Thank you.
Governor, my name is Isa Wahab from Intellectual still on the currency design. What percentage of currency outside us has come into CBN? And in analyzing your policies, do you think it favors ordinary Nigerians?
Good afternoon, Mr. Governor. My name is Pia Kutuba from the Nigerian Television Authority. I have 2 questions for you. The first is the debate around the ways and means borrowing, which the National Assembly is already trying to intervene or sort of chart some course. Can you provide us with a form of clarification on what the true picture is? And secondly is another issue that has been in the news, stamp duties. If you could give us an update on it, thank you.
Okay, Governor, the final one from Lagos sent online. From Nume Ekahe, these day newspapers. With the CBN championing the use of alternative payment channels, such as the e-Naira, POS, among others, what is the bank doing in collaboration with deposit money banks to ensure the safety of depositors' funds in the face of renewed efforts by fraudsters to breach the accounts of unsuspecting bank customers? Thank you, Governor.
Well, thank you very much. The first question says that that we've seen inflation dropping for the first time in almost about 10-11 months to about 31.34% by December, and whether this is a positive enough sign for us to expect inflation to trend lower in the coming months. Our response here is that yes, we are happy that some of the policies that we've introduced in the last couple of months in our attempt to rein in inflation are beginning to yield results. Not just about plateauing, but also beginning to drop. But Monetary Policy Committee members feel that a 10 basis points drop from 21.47% to 21.34% is just not good enough as a reason to begin to celebrate. That's year on year, but on the basis of month-on-month CPI, we still found out that inflation was still going up, both the headline and all that. On year basis, we saw food coming down, but at the same time, we still saw core inflation moving up. For us, it is not time to celebrate yet. MPC believes that, and you could see from the communique I read, we said, of course, loosening, and we use the word in the meeting, throw loosening into the Atlantic Ocean. Hold, well, keep it in the dustbin and let's watch. But of course, for now, it is tightening. The issue, therefore, was, to what extent should we tighten? Should we begin to say because inflation had begun to trend downwards that we should moderate the rate of tightening? Or that, listen, this is not enough sign and that we should remain aggressive? If you recall, rates were aggressive in 2022 for the last 4 meetings. The first one was 100 basis points, the second one 150 basis points, the third 100, and the fourth another 100. But those who felt that there is a need for us to remain aggressive felt that with inflation at 21.34%, it's already hurting growth and is moderating the level of output that we would have seen if inflation was within our own target range. You know, these days we have not even been able to talk about a target rate of between 7 and 10%. And at 21.4, there was no how inflation, we can begin to celebrate that inflation at 21.34% is good enough for us to begin to taper and the rest of them. So that's why you would see that the meeting was divided into two. Those who felt moderate the rate of increase so as to continue to, so that you don't create more problem for output, whereas those who felt increase aggressively feels that output is already being hurt. Anyway, at 3% or 3%, output is already being hurt, given every effort that both the monetary and fiscal authorities were putting in place to drive growth. So we might as well push aggressively to push inflation down so that when it comes to the level that we are comfortable with, we can begin to either moderate the rate of increase or begin to think of either holding or loosening. So that's the thinking of the members, and that's why we're saying, yes, we are happy that inflation rate has started to moderate year on year, but the other underlying numbers that we see behind does not give us cause to really celebrate, and for that reason, we are going to remain aggressive on rates. Now, the second question talked about the Naira design. It says, reports suggest that many people want the deadline to be shifted for reasons ranging from their inability to gain access to the new notes or deposit their old currencies. I must say here that unfortunately, I don't have good news for those who feel that we should shift the deadline. My apologies. The reason is because, just like the president had said on more than 2 occasions, and even to people privately, that for us 90 days, in fact, we feel is 100 days is enough for anybody who has money or the old currency to deposit it, the money in the banks. And we took every measure to ensure that all the banks were open or remain still open to receive all old currencies. 100 days, we believe, is more than adequate. We called on the banks. We said, not only are we requesting you to extend your banking hours so that you can receive old currencies, but we're also asking you to keep your doors open on Saturdays. Ladies and gentlemen, the banks did not have any reason to even keep their banking halls open on Saturdays. Neither did they see the kind of rush that they anticipated. Well, there were normal people who came in to deposit money into the banks, and maybe in the course of time, I'll also give you details about how much had come in. So we do not see any reason to begin to talk about a shift because people could not deposit their old monies into their banks. Now, about the circulation of the new currencies, we said to ourselves, the currencies are available. We hold at least 3 meetings every week with the banks. When we first started, we saw that the banks were paying more of the new currencies over the counter to their priority customers, rather than giving it to big and small customers or those who can call the vulnerable customers. We mandated them. We said, no, from now on, don't make any payment of new notes over your counter, which gives the opportunity for you to give in to your friends. Pay all new notes into your ATM. The ATM is a robot. Everybody queues. And then you take, whether it's 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000 that is programmed, everybody collects the same amount. That has worked. At the initial stages, yes, because some may say that they were collecting old notes from the ATMs. At the initial stages, we told the banks, just feed your machines in the morning with the new notes. When it finishes, so that people don't complain that they don't have currency, put old notes, right, so that you can continue to serve your customers. About a week or a week and a half ago, we changed tactics and said, okay, now, do not put old notes again. Put only new notes. And we increase the volume of disbursement of new notes to them. Put only new notes, because at some point we started also to tell the banks that, look, reduce the volume of old notes in your vaults by a certain percentage, because by the 31st of January, we want to have 0 old notes in your vaults. Or maybe at worst, what you will find is that because they will collect old notes on the 31st, we can say on the 1st, you should have 0 old notes in your vaults. Those are the things we did. So we felt, put only new notes in your ATMs. If it finishes, then everybody waits. The following day, put new notes again. And that is what is currently running. Our officials have gone around, even our press people have gone out to say, look, there is, I'll use the word adequate quantity of new notes available. But let's all know that it is a process of increasing. But are we producing? Our mint is producing, and we are supplying to the banks, and so it will continue to circulate into the system. I held a meeting with the Nigerian Governors Forum about that last week, Thursday, and some of them raised issues about, they are in the riverine areas, there are no banks in some of those riverine areas. Even in the non-riverine areas, there are some areas where there are no banks. We also heard from governors from Borno and Yobe State. And we told them that, look, we have 1.4 million touch points of our super agents. Those agents are going to be available to conduct cash exchanges. Let's not forget, the super agents are like kiosks, shops, stores in your community. So whether it's a riverine or upland area, they are there, they are selling sweets, they are selling kola nuts, but they have been appointed as agents that will do cash exchange and cash swap for you. These we have put in place. About a week and a half ago, we told our directors in CBN, assistant directors, deputy directors, and directors, now begin a mass sensitization and mobilization. When you get to the state capital where we have CBN, meet all the staff of the branch, call the banks in your community, in the area, and all of you go out on sensitization in churches, in markets, and in mosques. That had continued, and it will continue even after the 31st of January. We now also moved it further down. We said, listen, in areas that we say are riverine areas, now that our agents are ready, collect cash from the CBN, give them to those agents, they are appointed agents, and their names and details are available. We'll put them on our website, and we can put them on social media or any platform for people to see where they are. So at this time, our own staff, our directors, assistant directors, directors, this is running into the third week that they have been out on mobilization. And we have seen them on TV, people have seen them, and money is going down and is circulating to the lower rungs of the area, of the our community. I'll give a few examples. We have some information and video, and after this program, those of you who want to stay behind can see the videos about our staff and agents, how they cash in our communities. In areas like Baga, right, Monguno, Ran on the Lake Chad River basins, in Gala, Banki, Kirawa, Ngoshe, on the borders of Cameroon, Gwoza, Bama, Chibok, Damboa, Izge, Lassa, Askira, and Polka. All these are areas around the Sambisa. Our agents and our staff are all there, conducting cash swap and cash exchange, old to new currencies. So we believe that even before the 31st, all the noise of, people, I saw some is it a tweet by someone said, somewhere in Yobe, another one somewhere in Maiduguri, that they can't, they have old notes, now they can't buy again, they are dying or they are crying. Ladies and gentlemen, those who did those tweets, they know who they are. It is not the vulnerable and weak people that cannot write English that are doing this. Those who are doing them, they know themselves. And they know the purpose for which they are doing that. Like I keep saying, we will not go with them in that journey. We remain focused on the weak. We remain focused on the vulnerable in Nigeria. We will do everything, even after the 31st, to make sure that we are available to serve them, making sure that this new Naira permeates every nook and cranny of the country. So that was why I said I don't have good news for those who want the date to be changed. I think this covers the third and the fourth, still on Naira design, vaults. When we did before we came on with the new Naira design, we said that in 2015, currency in circulation was 1.42 trillion Naira. In 2022, currency in circulation had grown to 3.23 trillion Naira. More than double, ladies and gentlemen. Out of the 3.2 trillion, about 1.7 was outside the vaults of banks. This has made the efficacy of monetary policy to be difficult for monetary policy committees. Because what you would have expected is that when currency is issued, it will circulate. After some time, the old and worn out ones will be returned back to CBN. So if the old and worn out notes were returned back to CBN, there is no reason why currency in circulation will grow from 1.4 trillion to 3.23 trillion in 7 years. People are hoarding it. People are keeping vaults in their homes. We cannot allow them to be banks in their homes. They don't have the license to build bank vaults in their homes. They should release that money back to CBN, because what they are doing is that they are undermining monetary policy. They are keeping those monies to speculate against our currency, and it is making our work difficult in CBN. That for us in CBN, I use the word, is our own selfish interest. Other interest, yes. Is it they said those who are doing, who are holding ransom, right? Ransom taking or kidnapping. Oh no, I don't want to talk about that, please. So that is helping. And truly speaking, I'd imagine that, I mean, I may be wrong, maybe I'll be correct. I think kidnapping and ransom taking are somehow reduced. Security agents are doing a fantastic job, but I think that it has slowed those people down, because they know that if they collect old notes, it's not going to help them. So they might as well think of other ways. So that's what I'm saying. So, how much? By last week, we had seen close about between 1.3 to 1.5 trillion in. Okay? We are hoping that as we get into this week, we'll move closer to 2 trillion. If we get 2 trillion in, and those who decide to keep it involved, decide to keep it in their homes, I'm not going to force them to bring it out, because they've been waiting. And I don't know what next I'm going to do to beg them to bring it. So if they don't bring it, then I don't know what will happen. I mean, I know what will happen. By 31st of January, it will be useless in their hands. So I can only just beg them to please bring it. We will take it before 31st, on or before 31st. Bring it. Nobody is going to harass you. If you're afraid of being harassed, trust me, we have begged the FCC, we have begged ICPC, they should please allow us do our work so that people can bring money in. So we are begging them to bring it in. Nothing would happen to you, on my honor. Okay? The fourth question talked about winds and means. Ladies and gentlemen, the central bank is banker to government and also a lender of last resort to government. Since 2015, when this administration came on board, we have seen 2 recessions. We have seen, at least, aside from recession, global crisis, at least 2. We have been confronted COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen point in 2020, crude price came down below $20 a barrel. Revenues from crude sales dropped badly. We feel as CBN, because we are a lender of last resort, that it will be irresponsible for us to sit idle. It will be a dereliction in our responsibilities and duties as lender of last resort to ignore the government and allow the economy and our Nigerians to suffer. Ladies and gentlemen, what we did by lending to government as banker and lender of last resort is normal in any part of the world, particularly when countries face crisis. Any central bank, any Fed will do what we have done. So that is why I'm appealing to those who are exaggerating the import behind ways and means to please take it easy with us. Take it easy with us, and I believe by the special grace of God, since the President has written to the National Assembly, they will eventually give approval and CBN can now securitize this. That is the story on ways and means. Now on stamp duty. The truth is that the CBN will not be joined in any argument with anybody because it will overheat the system. But it's important for us to say that stamp duty is a revenue that needs to be collected for people who are conducting electronic transactions or stamp duty payments and all that. So it is about public accounts and public accountability. So that also means that we owe Nigerians the true situation about how much has been collected or not collected. So that is the only reason I'll be talking about it. Otherwise, I don't want to make any statement that would overheat the system. But the history behind stamp duty is this. Stamp duty, like you all know, people buy stamps, that's the real digital stamps of those days. But over time, we saw a reduction in the revenue coming from analog stamp duty, the paper stamp duty coming into government. So NIPOST in 2012 engaged some consultants. In 2012, I wasn't the governor, it was Lamido Sanusi. They came to the CBN and told them that they had a mandate to do electronic collection of stamp duties. At that time, there was no law backing it. So CBN said there was no law. For that reason, they would not force the banks. In 2014, towards the end of 2014, when I became governor, they came back and we also gave them the same explanation that we couldn't collect stamp duties because there was no law to back the collection. In 2015, they went to court. Around end of 2015, they got a court judgment. In spite of the fact that there was no law backing it, they got a court judgment forcing central bank to force the banks to begin to collect stamp duty. Afraid that I could be accused of contempt, we took the risk as CBN to write to the banks a circular saying, start collecting stamp duty. Some large customers who are into FMCG products protested and went to court. As I speak, some of those cases are still in court today. But in spite of that, we have continued to force and compel the banks that they must collect this stamp duty or electronic money transfer fees. So it is therefore I don't understand how the central bank that started forcing the banks in 2016 to collect stamp duty because we feel that it is a source of revenue generation for the country, how that same central bank can begin to withhold 89 trillion. So that it beats our imagination that those kind of arguments can come. Ladies and gentlemen, 89 trillion is so large. The total asset, if you understand accounting, the total asset of the banking industry today is about 71 or 71.5 trillion. The total deposit of the banking system today is 44.498 trillion. So how then is it possible that stamp duty, which is 89 trillion, that is twice the deposit of banks, how possible is that? And I truly don't understand. I just don't understand. So when it became some stories everywhere, we went into our records. We told banking supervision, banking payment system, please go into the system and rake out the total amount that has been collected on stamp duty from 2015 to date, 2016 to date. We told our people in banking supervision, contact the banks. Now, let the banks give us from their record how much they have collected on stamp duty from 2016 to date. And you know what? Tell the banks on their headed paper, they should sign that this is the amount they have collected on stamp duty from the 2016 to date. The report that we have in CBN is this: that stamp duty collected to date is 378 billion 686 million 315,505 naira 28 kobo. I'm reading it to the last kobo. I repeat, total stamp duty collected from 2016 to date in our record, and which the banks have signed on their headed paper how much they've collected, because this is public accounts. We owe Nigerians accountability, is 370 billion 686 million 315,505 naira 28 kobo. Out of that, FIRS has disbursed through FAC, or Ministry of Finance has disbursed to FAC, disbursed to FAC 226 billion 451 million 720,158 naira 88 kobo. And the balance in the account in CBN is 144 billion 234 million 595,346 naira 40 kobo. We went further. We said, look, banks, this is, we did a tabulation. The highest collection, and I will mention the name of the bank, the oldest bank in Nigeria, First Bank, collected 71.6 billion naira in 7 years. Their headed paper signed. So I truly don't know where 89 trillion is. But again, we at Central Bank, we have said we will continue to look for it. What have we done? We have engaged the big four audit firms, KPMG, PwC, and Deloitte, to go to the banks and do a forensic audit of all stamp duties. They have a way of, when by the time they simulate the number of transactions and volume, they will see it. And if there is any uncollected stamp duty, we will force the banks. They would pay to the last 1 penny. That is our position. Again, please, you can see how I've taken my time. There is no intention to overheat the system. Please press, help us, provide information, but please not overheat the system. Nigerians deserve the information because this is public account, and that is why we have done this afternoon. Thank you very much. However, before you go, we have some videos. If you have time, you watch the video about what we have done in cash swap, how our people, our directors are working in the various nooks and crannies, so you have proof to help you write your reports. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Governor. And with that, we've come to the end of this press briefing, the first for the year 2023. Good afternoon.
So you can play the video if you want to.